You crave alcohol or sugar, and you already know it's not really about the taste, it's about something else entirely, a kind of pressure inside you that needs to go somewhere. And for a few minutes, that drink or that piece of chocolate actually works. The pressure drops, you breathe easier, and then comes the guilt, because you swore to yourself you wouldn't do it again. If that sounds familiar, stay with me, because there's a biochemical reason why willpower alone rarely works here. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly what's happening in your brain and what one specific amino acid can do to interrupt that cycle. Not as a miracle cure, but as a real, science-backed tool that many people overlook. Let's start with a question most people never ask. What exactly are you craving when you crave alcohol or sugar? The honest answer is, you're not craving the substance itself, you're craving what it does to your brain. Both alcohol and sugar trigger a fast shift in your neurochemistry. Stress drops. Tension eases. Your brain gets a hit of relief, and it remembers that. The next time pressure builds, it reaches for the same solution. That's not weakness. That's how your brain is wired to survive. The problem is that this solution comes with a cost, and over time, that cost keeps rising. Now, here's where it gets interesting, and where most conversations about cravings completely miss the point. There's an amino acid called L-glutamine. You've probably heard of amino acids as the building blocks of protein, but glutamine does something far more specific in your body. It's the most abundant amino acid in your entire system, and it has a direct line into your brain chemistry. Here's why that matters. Glutamine converts into glutamate, and glutamate is the most abundant neurotransmitter in your brain. Most people, when they think about neurotransmitters, think serotonin or dopamine. Glutamate rarely comes up in everyday conversation, but it's absolutely central to how your brain functions. It's an excitatory neurotransmitter, meaning it activates, stimulates, drives cognitive function. Without it, nothing works properly. But glutamate doesn't work alone. It supports a balancing neurotransmitter called GABA, which is essentially the brake system of your brain. When your body is in a healthy, balanced state, these two work in harmony: accelerator and brake, energy and calm. You don't have to think about it. It just happens. When that balance breaks down, you feel it. Anxiety, restlessness, that low-grade hum of tension that never quite goes away, and your brain starts looking for shortcuts. Now here's the part that most people don't know. L-glutamine can do something quite remarkable. It increases gluconeogenesis. That's the process where your body produces new glucose from non-sugar sources. In simple terms, glutamine can be converted into glucose and feed your brain cells directly, quickly, without spiking your insulin, without the crash that comes after sugar, without the fog that follows alcohol. This means your brain gets the fuel it was actually looking for, just through a completely different pathway. The craving, for many people, quiets down, not because you've suppressed it, but because the underlying need has been met. That's a fundamentally different approach than just telling yourself to have more discipline. And there's more. Glutamate is also a precursor to glutathione, one of the most important antioxidants in your liver. It supports the integrity of your intestinal lining, which means it plays a role in preventing what's commonly called leaky gut. It accelerates recovery after illness, surgery, trauma, or prolonged stress. Your body needs more of it precisely when life is hardest. So why are so many people deficient? Two main reasons. The first one might surprise you: alcohol. Regular alcohol consumption blocks glutamine absorption and steadily depletes your stores over time. This creates a kind of biochemical spiral. The more you drink, the more depleted you become, the stronger the pull toward the next drink. It's not a character flaw, it's a feedback loop. The second reason is chronic stress, and this one is subtle. Under chronic stress, glutamate levels in a part of your brain called the hippocampus actually increase, which disrupts memory and learning. But in your frontal cortex, glutamate decreases, affecting focus and attention. And in the amygdala, your brain's stress processing center, glutamate drops as well, generating a persistent background feeling of anxiety. In other words, chronic stress doesn't just make you feel bad, it chemically reorganizes your brain in ways that make cravings harder to resist. Other things that can deplete glutamine: overtraining without sufficient recovery, physical trauma or surgery, chronic infections, and simply not getting enough of it through your diet. So what does glutamine-rich food actually look like? Animal proteins are the most concentrated sources: beef, chicken, fish, eggs, dairy. But you can also find meaningful amounts in cabbage, dark leafy greens like kale and spinach, and parsley. If you're already eating in a way that prioritizes whole, unprocessed foods, you're likely getting more than someone living on packaged products. But under stress, during recovery, or if you're actively trying to reduce alcohol or sugar, food alone may not be enough to close the gap quickly. That's where supplementation may help. Research suggests that some people find benefit in the range of 2 to 5 grams per day. That said, dosage is something to discuss with a healthcare professional. Everyone's situation is different. Now I want to come back to something I said at the beginning. That promise I made. I told you there's a biochemical reason why willpower alone rarely works. And here it is. If your brain is genuinely depleted of the raw material it needs to regulate mood, manage stress, and feel stable, then no amount of mental effort will reliably overcome that deficit. You can white-knuckle it for a while, but the biology keeps pulling. Addressing that deficit directly, through nutrition, through targeted support, through reducing the things that drain glutamine in the first place, changes the equation, not overnight, but measurably. What else supports this whole system? Regular movement without pushing your body to the point of exhaustion. Sleep, real, consistent sleep, which is when glutamine and glutamate recycling happens most efficiently, and whatever genuinely reduces your stress load, not suppresses it, reduces it. Those aren't the same thing. Here's what I'd suggest as a concrete next step for tomorrow. Look at what you ate today, not to judge it, just to notice whether you got any significant protein in each meal. Because glutamine starts with the basics, and for most people, the basics are more inconsistent than they realize. Over time, combining adequate dietary glutamine, reducing alcohol if that's part of your picture, managing stress in ways that actually work for you, and potentially discussing supplementation with a professional, that combination addresses the craving at its source rather than just fighting the symptom. One last thought. If you've tried to cut back on sugar or alcohol before and it didn't stick, I want you to consider that it may not have been a failure of willpower. It may have been a failure of information. Now you have a different angle. What you do with it is up to you. Which part of what I described today do you recognize most in yourself? The stress connection, the sleep issue, or something else? I'd genuinely like to know. Share it in the comments. In the next video, I'm going to look at another amino acid that plays a surprisingly central role in metabolism and mental clarity, and why most people are getting far too little of it. You won't want to miss it. If this kind of content is useful to you, research-based, practical, no hype, then subscribing makes sense. New videos go up regularly, and they're all built around the same idea, understanding your body well enough to actually work with it. This video is based on current research and personal experience. It's not a substitute for individual medical advice. If you're dealing with addiction or a health condition, please talk to someone qualified to help you directly.